Senate Education Committee at this time. Thank you for joining us today. We are continuing with regard to working on Senate Bill 340, but before we get started, are there any bill introductions? Seeing none, we will go ahead and move forward. I want to first of all make note that we did receive today testimony from Jerry Henn. He's the Assistant Executive Director from USA Kansas and the Kansas School Superintendent Association. We did upload that for you to access. I will say the net of that message that we received is, yes, they certainly support the Promise Scholarship. There are some concern with superintendents that live in our more rural districts and in more rural areas in the state. And the concern was that the Promise Scholarship does not provide for housing for those students. And that's true. Promise Scholarship pays for tuition, textbooks, supplies and materials that are needed by students. It does not provide housing. That is something very similar to last week when we were hearing testimony from our technical colleges that for additional things, it really is going to be up to the institution to come up with student support and scholarships or aid in some manner for those other issues that Kansas students might need. Committee, so that you know, I have been working with our revisor as well as representatives from the Board of Regents and from our Kansas Independent College Association to help us move through what is in the bill as far as language. There are some changes, and so hopefully you brought your computers because Tamara's going to help us through with some of the some of the balloons that we have in working with making sure that what the language says is what's really intended, and that is the entire goal of the trailer bill. Is now that we are, interestingly enough, tomorrow it will be 1 year since we had the hearing last session with regard to the Kansas Promise Act. And so now that the scholarship implementation has been in place for fall semester as well as starting this spring semester, we have all identified bumps in the road, and what we're working to do is to smooth that out so it helps our potential Kansas students. So at this time, Heather, can you please share balloon number 2?
The changing the definition of the part-time student, which is on page 1, line 26.
Yes, and Tamara is going to launch that electronic version to you. And let's go ahead and wait a minute for it to, it's not always as magical and delicious as we'd like it to be. We're on page 1, and we're on lines 26, 27, and 28. And the part-time student is important to us for a number of reasons, because we're looking, they have to maintain that part-time status to be in the program, as well as if they were to transfer in a 2+2. So for this, is that out there? Okay. If you would go ahead and read that to us, Heather. It should be coming available to you.
Essentially, it just changes the definition of a part-time student. It means a student who's enrolled for 6 or more credit hours and is not enrolled as a full-time student in the academic year. So rather than listing fall, spring, and summer, it just clarifies it to the academic year, since we have some courses that are sort of not in the regular semester.
Are there? It's an email. Yep. Yeah, this actually goes faster to email it to you. Tamara, did you have any additional explanation? Okay. Yes, Senator Petty.
Thank you. Okay, part-time student means a student who is enrolled for 6 credit hours.
6 or more.
Okay. For 6 credits hours or more.
In an academic year.
And is not enrolled as a full-time student. So just for my clarification, does that mean they have not enrolled during that academic year as a full-time student?
So what it means is if you're going to get the Promise Scholarship, you've got to be in at least 6 hours at some time during the academic year to be part-time, because you've got to have at least 6. So CNA classes are 5 hours. You better add a CMA class in there to get to 6 hours to qualify for the Promise Scholarship. As long as you take 6 hours anytime in the academic year, then you're qualified for the scholarship.
And you're not found to be
Full-time.
in default of it as well. Senator, yes.
Does it need to say current academic year, or is language? I'm just wondering if someone's like, well, in the academic year of, I don't know, does it need to be current?
I'm going to go with the reviser's opinion on that.
Tamara with the revisor's office. Thank you. I don't care if you want to clarify it in some way. I would caution against using the term current, because what does that mean 10 years from now? But if you want to say something to the effect, a student who is enrolled for 6 credit hours as part of the Kansas Promise Scholarship Program, something like that to clarify, I'm happy to help work on language, but again, I would shy away from current.
Other questions? Senator Sykes, did you have a follow-up question?
No, I think we need to try to be as precise as possible without, I don't know, presenting. I don't want to have problems moving forward, but I think we do need to specify that it has to be 6 hours together. I don't know. I'm still working on it in the language. Would love suggestions.
Senator Petty.
I guess I'm hung up with, okay, student A is enrolled in, gets accepted into the Promise Scholarship Program, is enrolled in the fall semester in 6 hours, and then in the spring semester as a full-time student.
That's okay. They just can't be enrolled in 5 hours and then 0 hours the rest of the year. That's not okay, because that wouldn't meet the definition of part-time. But they can be part-time one semester, full-time the rest of the semester, but they just couldn't be under 5, is what we're trying to say. You can't take under 5 in the academic year and qualify.
Okay. Senator Sykes.
This is the language. So part-time student means a student who is enrolled for 6 or more credit hours in which the student receives the Kansas Promise Scholarship, or in the academic year in which the student receives the Kansas Promise Scholarship.
Okay. Is there any discussion? And thank you for that wordsmithing via revisor. Senator Gossage.
So the way I read this, it says part-time student means a student who's enrolled for six or more credit hours and is not enrolled as a full-time student. That has not changed.
It says in the academic year.
So I thought I understood Senator Petty to say, that say in the fall semester they took 6 hours, and then in the following semester they were a full-time student.
Right.
That's in the academic year. So you're saying that's constitutes 6 or more in the academic year, but you're just saying, so I have to agree, this is not real clear, because it would appear that you cannot be a full-time student in the academic year at all.
I understand I understand that you're seeing that that way. They would be a part-time student if they were only in 6 or more. They would not be considered a part-time student if they were enrolled in full-time. But Tamara, why don't you read us that revised language that you came with? And that is absolutely why we work this. Because if you're reading it and it doesn't seem to get us in the direction we need, that's why we continue to work it. So Tamara, if you would read that one more time for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is just the definition of part-time student. This does not mean that full-time students are excluded from this program in any way. So the definition of part-time student would read, part-time student means a student who is enrolled for 6 or more credit hours in the academic year in which the student receives the Kansas Promise Scholarship, and such student is not enrolled as a full-time student.
So Senator Petty and then Senator Gossage.
So I guess
The requirement is they must at least be for the academic year enrolled part-time. That's what a part-time student is, and it's 6 credit hours or more.
the confusing part, I think that sounds like it's for Senator Gossage, the same thing, is do we have to have and is not enrolled as a full-time student in that definition of part-time student?
That would be for our revisor, and I would also, either if we could have someone from KBOR weigh in for us. It can be Scott, it could be, thank you for being with us today.
Blake Flanders, Board of Regents. I think it's okay because the definition is what is a part-time student? So it doesn't mean that a full-time student wouldn't be eligible. It just means we're trying to define part-time students. So if you happen to become a full-time student, you're no longer a part-time student.
So Senator Gossage, and then we'll go to Tamara again, our revisor. Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And that actually, when you said this is not, or I guess you said it's not defining eligibility, it's defining part-time student, that made more sense to me. Now I get that. It's just a definition, not determining eligibility. But then it brings the question, why are we changing it to academic year instead of semester or term?
I think so.
I need you to introduce yourself again. Sorry.
Hello, Blake Flanders, Board of Regents. So every institution goes by an academic year. Sometimes the spring, summer, fall might fall outside of an academic year. But if you have academic year, it'll be the same for every institution. It's not like a deal breaker, but it's just easier for institutions to know it's that academic year.
So Senator Gossage, the example would be if the classes start in May 1st, is that spring or is that summer? And so from an institutional perspective, it's just making it clear it didn't have to be in the traditional spring semester, the traditional summer semester, because we have these things we call interims or winterims. And so this academic year just makes it easier for the colleges to administer the scholarship.
Senator.
Okay, I don't want to keep belaboring this, but so if a student, because you said a student could take like 6 hours in one semester, then be a full-time student. So when you say 6 hours in an academic year, could a student conceivably take 3 hours in one semester, none in the 6 hours total? That's pretty minimum for a student?
Yes, it is.
Okay, all right, just want to make sure I understand.
You are
I'm
understanding.
not saying if it's good or bad, I'm just wanting to understand the definition.
You understand.
Okay, thank you.
Right, because we are not mandating that they be a full-time student. We are not mandating that they be a full-time student. The only mandate comes later, and that's how much time they have to complete it. So I need a point of clarification from Tamara. Did we strike is not enrolled as a full-time student?
I have not heard that yet.
Okay. Well, I kept hearing questions, do we need to have, and is not enrolled as a full-time student? So, Senator Solentrop, I've not heard you pipe in yet. I'm observing. You're observing, okay. Okay. Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I mean, this is a definition of part-time, so I think that says that it should not be full-time. But my question then, in other statutes along with this, do we put in the qualifications in the statute, the language of who is qualified for this? I mean, it's not in 340, but I think in the surrounding, it should be there. And maybe that's where we're losing that connection.
Thank you. There are sections actually in 340 that do talk about what qualifications a student must have to be eligible. And I believe one of the sentences says a full-time or part-time student.
And that's part of the reason that we put that it had to be at least 6 credit hours. Follow-up, Senator Sykes?
So I guess my question then should we have a definition of what a full-time student means, or will that only confuse things more?
We'll call on Tamara, the reviser.
I would defer to your wisdom in this. I'm not quite sure if any representative from the Board of Regents or the community colleges would have any input on how they understand.
If it makes everyone feel better, I think we're fine with putting the definition of full-time student in the bill too.
Okay, Senator Gossage.
Is there somewhere else with the Kansas Board of Regents or anywhere else a definition of part-time student? What I'm finding online is just 12 hours or less than 12 hours per semester, per term. And is this just a part-time thing we made up, a part-time definition for this bill?
Hello, Blake Flanders again. The definition does just default, so it's like you're a full-time student, and if you're less than that, you're a part-time student. I think what the intent was in this statute is that somebody just did take 1 hour and continue on and on. There was discussion early on in groups that we don't want a professional student in here that just continues to extend the time period. And so I think that was part of the reason why part-time student was defined in this act, is just to be able to move people along if they were in this scholarship program. Okay.
I think it's also important to remind that in a lot of the technical programs, be it degree or certificate, certain courses are only offered certain semesters. They're not necessarily offered every semester. So it's also a part of making sure students understand if I begin this course of study, it needs to continue. And if I drop out of semester, as far as I already took 6 hours, let's say the fall semester, I'm not going to take any in spring, I might have to wait until the following spring to take what's that next level of courses. There are also certain programs such as nursing that it is very prescribed every semester what you will take. So it's also that ongoing understanding, helping the student understand that these are courses that are building blocks on top of each other. And so to move forward, you have to have kind of that continuum of study.
So when we counsel students, we say you must take 6 hours an academic year. You may take as many as you wish in your promise eligible program. Later in this act, we're going to limit the number of months they have to complete their program to end the professional students. And so essentially 6 is the minimum you can take, to Senator Erickson's concern that that's not very many. But then there's a time limit, so it gives them the flexibility for the people who are working and going to school at the same time.
I'm seeing Senator Petty and Senator Gossage.
I thought I did, sorry, I was turned it off. I think that in this definition of part-time student, we do not need, and is not enrolled as a full-time student. I don't know for sure if we even need a definition for full-time student in here, but I don't think we need that in the definition of part-time student.
Okay, so I think that we do have, Tamara, there you do have one person saying remove is not enrolled as a full-time student. Senator Gossage, did you have a follow-up?
I'm sorry to belabor this, but it appears to me that if this is what we were telling students this year, that you have to have at least 6 in the academic year, that was actually not what the bill said, correct? It said per semester, at least 6 per semester. So it seems to me they would not have been eligible if they were only taking 6 for the academic year, correct?
I don't know what the original language said, Tamara.
So the way the statute currently reads, as it has been enacted, is part-time student means a student who is enrolled for 6 hours or more in a semester and is not enrolled as a full-time student.
So it doesn't address, is that the whole academic year? So right now, you have to take all 6 in your semester. All 6 in one.
Right, so if we just say 6 for the academic year, then one could take 3 and 3, could they not?
Yes.
So then, if that's the case, is that not expanding the qualifying population that would qualify for the Promise Act?
It's not expanding the population, but it's giving the existing population flexibility. It's unlikely that you're going to take 3 hours a semester because you can't take the classes and get done in the right time. So that's why the 6 hours is there, but this would not preclude 3 and 3. If you want to preclude 3 and 3, then we should go back to the original language and not have the amendment.
Thank you.
I would say that we did hear back, this is Chair Baumgartner, we did hear back from some of the schools, and they had students that wanted to take the 3 credit hours the first semester, make sure that they had their footing. This was particularly students that had not been in higher ed for some time or had never been in higher education. So those would be those that were over the age of 21. And so they kind of wanted to get their feet wet and were hesitant to sign up for the scholarship. So it was based on some feedback that we heard from institutions.
So did they
Senator
tell
Gossage.
those students that they were ineligible for the Promise Act? Because it was only 3 hours in the semester when the bill reads 6?
I advised every community college that I talked to that it had to be 6 in one semester. So if you're doing 5-hour CNA, you better put a Med Aid class with it because it had to be 6.
Okay, thank you.
So we are back to making sure that our revisor has what is our intention. So first of all, we did hear a request for us to have a definition for full-time student. So if we could get that definition, and hopefully that we can address that tomorrow. With regard to part-time student, as it has been suggested by Senator Petty, the part-time student reads, the part-time student means a student who is enrolled for 6 or more credit hours in the academic year in which the Promise Scholarship has been awarded. Did I get that correct? Tamara, correct? I think the last 2 words are wrong, aren't they? Go ahead, correct me.
You were so close. In the academic years in which the student receives the Kansas Promise Scholarship.
Okay, in which the student receives. So that is the language that we have before us. Do I have a motion for that language? Yes, Senator Sykes, you may ask a question.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think this is an improvement, and I guess my question, and maybe this is to Heather or others, I think part of us putting the Promise Scholarship is looking at critical need and those jobs that we're really trying to fill. So if we do limit it to 6 hours over an academic year instead of 6 in a semester, what are we doing to the workforce, like getting into those positions? And this is just, I'm kind of devil's advocate, are we prolonging them getting into those positions, or is it going to allow more people the flexibility to do it? Because our intent in the whole scholarship and providing these dollars is because we saw critical need across our state and wanting to get the workforce.
I don't think this hurts any. So we're focused on high wage, high demand, or critical need jobs. What this does is give a slight bit more flexibility. And to your point about high demand, some of our programs are really high demand, so they may not be able to get into the class this semester. They may need to take the class next semester because we're full. So this actually, I think, does help in those cases, especially of some of our most in-demand programs.
Tamara?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will also note, and I believe Heather mentioned this earlier, that a student does have to complete the program according to the bill within 48 months.
Okay, so I am not seeing a motion. So I believe that means that for now, this balloon amendment, we are going to move off it, and it will stand as it was in law, which is a part-time student means a student who is enrolled for 6 credit hours and is not enrolled as a full-time student. So if, Senator Suellentrop, I am.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Couple questions to bring myself up to speed. There are a substantial number of changes and/or improvements to the bill itself. As I understand, there was an award of about $10 million to fulfill these scholarships, and we've used somewhere between $5 and $6 million.
Correct. Originally, it was the original base bill is $10 million for this fiscal year and next fiscal year. After that point, any funding would be no more than 150% of what was actually distributed.
And we have excuse me if I can converse with you a minute.
Absolutely.
And we have the number of students enrolled, and we have what they're enrolled in.
We do.
And is the changes to the bill itself to the benefit of the institutions, that they're having a more difficult time to make a determination of who is eligible and what the award could be? Is there a tolerance in here where we feel like, it's general enough that we want to get these people educated and into the job market, that we can accept that, or we want to fine-tune this so much that we've got to have every one of them purely accepted without question?
I think that we could take a variety of different paths as far as those questions that you posed. Part of what we're trying to do is make sure that as institutions are processing applications, that they're doing so consistently, so that institution A, that might be a community college, is applying it in the very same way that institution C, which is a technical college, is applying. Because what we've kind of heard from testimony, but what we've also heard from just institutions in the field, the way in which they have approached the award of the scholarship has not been as consistent as we would like it to be. We also know in conversations with the Board of Regents that one of the amendments one of the changes in this bill, in this trailer bill, is the date for adopting rules and regulations, because the implementation has been such a heavy lift that they haven't gotten to that part yet. So
Question I have in
Yes.
conjunction with all of this and what you're educating me on is what are the reporting requirements? Have you got, or have you received reports indicating the number of students, what they're in, what they've received so far?
I
Detail.
did see today, I saw a draft that the Board of Regents have prepared. It's not finalized, but we will be seeing that soon. But what we do know is we have nearly 700 students, and that, if I am correct, help me, that is fall semester, not necessarily what's happened for spring semester. So that's fall semester only. Now, based on the students that did enroll for fall semester, the regents did essentially, not literally, but essentially encumber the funds for the students to enroll and to continue courses in subsequent semesters. We also heard that in many of these degree as well as certificate programs, the greater cost is going to be at the very beginning. So if someone just is starting a dental hygiene program, so if they were a first-year student in fall, that was the most expensive semester because that's when they purchased their tools and instruments. Now, someone could be in their second year of dental hygiene and have applied in the fall or even the spring semester. Perhaps they didn't hear about it, so those expenses wouldn't necessarily carry through. We also know that costs are different per institution based on which textbooks they use and what tools or instruments or supplies they require students. So what happens in one technical college isn't necessarily going to be the same in another technical college or in a community college. But they have been working to assure that they are encumbering so that we actually know what funds are available for new students coming in. But a new student can apply for that scholarship, and that is one of the things that is here for clarification. A clarifier, we had some institutions that were only letting students apply right before the semester started. And so one of the clarifying changes in the trailer bill is that students can apply at any point, at any time. So right now, we are a couple weeks into spring semester. A student that is enrolled in 8-week classes can go ahead and apply for what's going to be the second half of spring semester.
One clarification on the money piece, the 5 million to 6, I think it's actually 4.7 million. That's a projection for the whole year. So for fall and spring, not just for fall.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, committee, for your patience.
Nope. We're glad to have the questions. I have Senator Erickson and then Senator Gossage.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as I'm listening to Senator Solentrop's line of questioning, it reminded me of a question. So the max is 10 million a year. And then as the chair referenced, then the next year it could go up to 150% of that.
Only after the second year.
Okay, and that would be 15 million, correct?
Only if actually next fiscal year 10 million is expended. It can only go up to 150% above what was actually expended.
If, my question is, if the maximum is expended each year, let's just say it is, which would be a good thing because students would be getting that 8. But if I'm understanding it right, and help me understand this, so let's just, for argument's sake, just say year 1, 10 million. Year 2, 15 million. No.
Year 2 is only 10 million also.
Okay, year 3 would be what?
It could be 15 million only if the 10 million the year prior was expended.
But it's all subject to appropriation. So even if it was 10 million, it could go up to 150. If appropriation says, no, you're only getting 10 million, then we've got another problem. Different problem.
But as, what I'm trying to get, as the bill is written, year 3 could be 15 million. Assuming year 4 would be what? 22 million? Year 5 would be 30. Okay, so it has that multiplier effect year after year, assuming everything falls into place. So I just did a little quick math, which is kind of frightening me a little bit because it looks, if that were to happen, and I know that's a big if, but as the bill is written, in year five, we could be looking at 50 million if my math is plus change. Year 7, 113 million. And by year 13, we're over $1 billion. The way the bill is written, is that correct? I just want to make sure I'm understanding that.
I see.
I'll be subject to appropriation.
Yeah. Dr. Flanders.
Yeah, it is subject to appropriation. Here's why I want to just allay some concern on that. It's a unique scholarship because it's paying a difference. So as the federal government raises the Pell amount, the promised scholarship, if the prices at the institution stay about the same, the promised scholarship will shrink because you will come in with more federal Pell money and they'll take a difference between, let's say that was the only scholarship or the only aid you received. Then there's a difference between what the full price is and the difference in Pell. So if Pell increases, the amount of state need is going to decrease. So I think two things are going to, I'm predicting this is going to be different than Senate Bill 155 because of a couple of reasons. We do have significant numbers in border colleges. So I'll take as an example Johnson County Community College. There's going to be students who go into those programs that do not take this scholarship because they think I might be working in Missouri. Or if you're in a Southeast community college and the hospital is in Joplin. If I'm in a nursing program and I think I'm going to work over in Joplin, I'm not going to take this scholarship because I'm going to have to pay it back. So I think that's going to be a little bit limiting, and there's a number of border colleges. And then second, as Pell expands, and if it expands faster than the price of the community or technical college, there's going to be a narrower difference. So, and then it's subject to appropriation.
Okay, I appreciate that. My concern still stands as written. There's some assumptions being made, but as written, the state could potentially, right? I just want to make sure I'm understanding that.
Well, subject to appropriation means that this bill could say up to 150%, then the Appropriations Committee only gives 10 million, so it would just be the 10 million. And so then we would have to, on this side, figure out how to limit it. There are some other amendments which I think you're going to hear about that also try to limit it and cap it a little further to get to your concern.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Gossage, I think your hand was up next.
As far as the balloons that we're on right now that we were discussing,
The full-time and part-time, which
right.
have a motion.
As far as the definition, I have two concerns. One is we're just creating this definition of part-time that doesn't exist anywhere else in college. As far as what is a part-time student, it's pretty well accepted. It's under 12 hours per semester. By even saying 6 hours per semester, we're cutting it in half. So if we were to say
A part-time student could technically be taking only 1 credit hour per semester.
exactly. However, we're defining that as 6 hours or more as long as they're not a full-time student, correct?
If they were at 12 hours or more, they would be a full-time student.
Right, so it would be under 12. I just want to help me with the logistics of this, but I would rather make a substitute motion that it would say 6 hours per semester or 12 hours per academic year.
And Tamara, you can help us with this. That would be what is in the base bill, essentially, when it says a part-time student means a student who's enrolled for 6 credit hours.
Currently in the bill, part-time student, if the bill were to pass, would mean a student who is enrolled for 6 credit hours or more in the fall, summer, or spring semester and is not enrolled as a full-time student.
But it doesn't mention academic year,
Correct,
right?
correct.
So I was just saying I would be fine if we were to say the academic year as far as 12 hours, because it doesn't mention that under between 6 and 12 or something of that nature. Because if you're more than 12 hours in a semester currently, you're considered a full-time student, right?
Correct. Senator Petty.
Didn't Tamara just a short time ago tell us there was a problem with saying academic year? I thought that came up as a.
It did come
Senator
up.
Sykes brought that up.
The academic year came up, and that was something that I believe it was Heather Morgan addressed. Senator Sykes, did you have a question or a statement?
I guess just a quick, I think I'm getting more confused with this because I think we didn't have a motion for changing the part-time. And so if we left it currently, you had to be enrolled in 6 hours in one of those semesters. So I don't think the substitute motion, you're actually saying that you have to take 6 hours each of those. Okay, thank you.
Let's go to the next, what is the next balloon that you have, Heather?
I believe it's balloon 5. I'm not feeling so rosy about if we thought that was so complicated. This one's a little more complicated too. This is based on what I know the various legislators have spoken to me about, and we've worked with KBOR on this language, and it's balloon 5, and I think Tamara's going to email it to Cindy. And I'll wait just a second and then explain. And this kind of goes back to the high wage, high demand, or critical need, which will hopefully be addressed in a different balloon than this. But what this balloon would do is say that no college can limit the scholarships beyond what is the legislative intent of the bill. So they can't say, I'm just going to award it for livestock judging and not dental hygiene. If you have programs that are high wage, high demand, and critical need in the fields defined in the bill, any student who applies and is found eligible shall be given the full Promise Act award that they qualify for. So we're not, to your point about is this for the students or for the institution, this is, if the institution has it and the student wants to be in it and there's money available, award the scholarship rather than institution saying, well, I only want to offer the scholarship for these special programs over here.
Cindy, were you able to email that? Okay, she just got it and she's emailing it to you now. Do you have it? Okay.
And I would say this is just clarification from how I think most people have been awarding the scholarship anyway.
Are there any questions for Heather, for KBOR, or for our reviser, Tamara? Senator Petty? No question. Seeing no question, do I have a motion for this balloon amendment?
I'll make a motion to accept this
Okay.
balloon amendment.
I believe it's number 5.
Number 5.
Okay, I have a motion. I have a second also from the senator. Is there any discussion? Oh, right over there. O'Shea. Senator Gossage.
So I just want to clarify, I think later on we changed the fields, we have a discussion of the fields of study, correct?
We will have that discussion, yes.
So I just feel like this is predicated on what we're going to do later, and if I were to vote on this motion, I would have discussion about the other, and this may change.
Okay. I don't know that do we have a balloon yet on the fields of study?
Yes.
Okay. So obviously the request has been, can we also see that balloon while we are considering balloon number 5? And I'm
As
not
it's
sure what that number
regarding
is.
promise eligible programs, if I may, Madam Chair.
You may.
So this will be balloon 8. And essentially what balloon 8 will do is colleges may choose one additional field of study. There's a list of 5 fields in the bill: ag, food and natural resources, education and training, law, public safety, corrections and security, or distribution and logistics, so they get to pick one of those. And whatever programs or certificates they have in one of those fields that are high wage, high demand, or critical need to their community, they would be scholarship eligible at that institution. And so this bit, the other amendment, 5, would say you can't limit it any further than whatever you pick there that's high wage, high demand, critical need, and the 4 base programs, the construction and education and healthcare and IT. And it's all, the only programs are high wage, high demand, or critical need in those first 4, and then whatever the college chooses as their 5th from that number 1 through 5 listed in the bill. Does that make sense?
Tamara, were you wanting to add something?
I was just going to clarify that while both balloons do address programs within fields of study, they do not actually legally impact each other.
Okay. So in balloon number 8, it creates a list of 5 for the institutions to pick from, and they would notify the Board of Regents as to what that 5th field of study would be, and the Board of Regents would then identify which degree and which certificates under that field of study fit that criteria of being either high wage and or high demand and or critical need. So that process always goes through the Board of Regents as far as identifying what's that 5th field of study, and then which of the certificate or degree programs fit that criteria of high wage, high demand, critical need under that field of study. Senator Gossage.
So this is in addition to the other fields of study, the original?
The original 4 fields, and then there was a 5th that they could select, but it didn't say field of study, it said program in the original bill, and it was considered that there was supposed to be a field of study rather than a program for that 5th.
And then we've identified what the 5 fields of study are.
What they can choose from,
They can choose from.
yes.
And then this will be left up to the Board of Regents, correct, to determine if this is?
Each institution would identify, so Cowley County Community College would notify the Board of Regents and say, we have selected this as our 5th field of study. These are the certificate or degree programs, or might be certificate and degree programs, and the Board of Regents would go through those and make sure that each of those had fit that criteria of either high demand or high wage or critical need, and it might be and on some of those. And so they would then publish these are our 4 areas of study. Here's our 5th area that's unique just to Cali. And these are the degrees or certificates that are being offered under that, just like they did in those other 4 fields of study.
Do we know of the colleges and tech schools which which programs they're offering and which they're not? Is it all 4? Do they have to offer all 4 to offer this 5th? Sorry, I just am not
They
sure.
do not. Every institution was allowed to go through those 4 areas and find which of their programs, either degree or certificate, fit under it. And there are some institutions that have some of those offerings where they don't actually have a degree or certificate program within it. The same thing is true. I'm seeing that Mr. Smathers is nodding his head from the Board of Regents. The same is true of our private not-for-profits. Some of them might only have, and Matt Lindsay, I know, is in our audience. He might be able to answer, but I think they only have 1 or 2 of those areas, those fields of study
In the original 4.
in the original 4.
So let's say they have 2, then they can still pick from one of these.
They can.
So what if they had none? Can they still pick from one of these? What if they had none of the 4?
No.
So they have to have at least one of the
Have at
4.
least 1, and they also have to have an existing program. They can't create a program just to fit into a field of study.
So originally, we were told that it was tech schools, it was industry, it was community colleges that kind of came together and came up with the first 4 fields of study. How were these determined?
They did.
These are the other fields of study which are on the Board of Regents K-TIP report, which are generally the technical education programs categorized into these fields that are offered by the community and technical colleges. They are also the other fields of study that were kind of in discussion last year with House and Senate at conference about what should that other program be, and these were kind of the other ones that were identified, but they're very clearly delineated in what they call the K-TIP report at the Board of Regents, and generally there are associate's degrees and certificates in each of these 5 other ones that they can choose. So for instance, Johnson County may choose logistics, whereas Seward County may choose ag as their other program. And so if you look at those, we think that there's something that is high wage, high demand, critical need in different areas of the state. And so then it'll be up to the colleges.
It's field of study, and so we're going to have Matt answer real quickly about what's happening at his institution, and then we're going to hear from Dr. Flanders.
I can be very quick, Madam Chair, and you essentially answered it, which is for the independent colleges, most of them do not offer programs in all 4 of those core areas. They might be more focused in education or in healthcare or IT, but they can't offer the 5th program without already starting with those others. I'm sorry, Matt Lindsay, independent colleges.
Dr. Flanders?
Yes, I wanted to, thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to address Senator Gossage's question.
Right.
The 4 fields were selected by the state, included. The 5th field, there's really nothing, it's just an institutional choice. What we will do at the board is, that field might have a number of programs in it. So in order to offer in order to provide promised scholarships in those programs, we will put those through state data to determine if they're high wage, high demand, or if it's critical need, there'll have to be a discussion with the institution, and we'll use data there. But the 5th field is, I call it kind of a wild card, that the institution can just choose that. I think that was the intent, to meet local need.
I see that Senator Straub has a question or a comment, I'm not sure, but she's with us virtually. Senator Straub?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I've been listening carefully all along here. I have actually 2 questions. First of all, is the reason for the 5th field of study because the 10 million allocated funds was not fully used? Is that the reason for choosing a 5th field of study?
No, originally and I think that Senator Erickson could help with this as well. Senator Sykes has left the meeting, but when we were negotiating, they wanted each institution to have the opportunity to have a 5th that was unique to their region, to their workforce needs. we thought when we were negotiating that it was field of study, so that it would include multiple programs, either degree or certificate or a combination. But instead, the language that was, that came out of the conference committee was program, not field of study. So that has been something that the institutions have felt all along, that it was field of study, but the language actually said program. And so that is the need to make it consistent with the other 4 areas.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. I understand trying to keep things fair across the varying community colleges and technical schools. So my second question then is, how do we determine the order of awarding the Promise Scholarship? Do students who were awarded the scholarship in the first year take precedence over new students for the second year of this scholarship program? Or how do we determine which students at what schools, in what order are they awarded these scholarships?
Well, what's intended is it's a first come, first serve. So as the students apply in any given institution, they fill out FAFSA based on the FAFSA results. And I think this gets back to the concern that Senator Erickson addressed. You know, what we're finding is far more students were eligible for Pell assistance than even the students or the institution realized. So as we increase FAFSA completion, we're going to find more and more students will be receiving federal Pell money. So that's a plus for the program. Now, if you have been accepted into the Promise Scholarship Program, your funding is essentially baked in there or encumbered, if you will, for your continuation. But each institution is required to do that semester by semester spot check to make sure that they, 1, are passing their courses, and 2, that they're enrolling in their courses and that they're staying within either their degree or certificate program area. So that's part of why the distribution of funds originally was not codified into the legislation, and that's one of the changes in this trailer bill for Senate Bill 340 that we're discussing. Because what we did is we built in that so that the Board of Regents, to help them stay on top of what funds needed to be encumbered, that the payouts would be every 3 months to the institution, and that would give them truly that running tally of what the obligation is for those scholarship funds. So we know each institution has figured out their best estimate of what it is to complete, and I hate to keep harping back on it, but it's pretty easy for the 2-year RN degree. They know, each institution knows what the cost is for that. And so that's how they project out. But those funds are to continue to disperse, and it's up to the Board of Regents to stay in contact with all of the institutions. And that's part of why we wanted to make sure that simply because you were enrolling in perhaps high wage, high demand, but it also had a high expense as far as tools, that those students weren't put in the back burner, but if they got in there and did their due diligence, filled out FAFSA, filled out their application, and they were eligible, in fact, that they would receive that scholarship. So that's part of why we do have that language in the blue number 5 that you have before you, is that if the student's done everything that they need to do to apply for the scholarship, that they will in fact receive it. They wouldn't be put aside for some other program that perhaps an institution was working to try and fill. Does that help you, Senator Straub?
Yes, I still have some concerns along the same lines as Senator Erickson about how quickly this could balloon. And with all the changes that are being made recently, especially with healthcare workers, What if we have a student who dropped out of the program after being a Promise Scholarship recipient the first year? They've dropped out, they've taken a job. Do they have to pay those funds back? What does that do to the total award amount that needs to be awarded the following year? I have a lot of questions, and I'm sure we will continue this conversation tomorrow in committee.
Okay. If a student drops out of a program, then they are responsible for, then that scholarship became a loan, and they are responsible to pay back the state. So that does go back. If someone started an RN program, it's possible, I suppose it's possible that they could take the test for the LPN certification. And so they could potentially begin working in that capacity. They absolutely would not be able to be working as a registered nurse. That would require that they pass national boards for them to do that. So that would not be possible. But if they drop out of the program, and those throughout our state, those are selected of admission, they would be out of the program, and the institution would then turn their name over to the Board of Regents, and they would begin that collection process. Committee, I see that we are now out of time. If you have amendments that you want to work on with our reviser, Tamara, please do so. We will continue moving forward on this. And certainly if someone would like to put in an amendment with regard to where we are with the 10 million, that certainly is something. It was what was negotiated with the Commerce Committee on the House side. But if that's something, then it certainly would be appropriate to add to this piece of legislation. So thank you so much for your participation. Committee is adjourned.